I still remember the exact moment I realised I had stopped breathing properly. Not physically. My lungs worked fine, pushing air in and out like they were supposed to. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how to take a real breath. The kind that fills your chest with something more than just oxygen. The kind that reminds you you're alive. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything unravelled. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee because I'd forgotten the pot on the stove again. My daughter, Emma, was 7 then, sitting at the table with her cereal, humming some song from school. The sunlight came through the window in that particular way it does in early spring, hesitant, like it wasn't quite sure if winter had really let go yet. I was folding the same dish towel for the 3rd time when my phone buzzed. A text from my husband, Marcus. "We need to talk tonight. It's important." 6 words. That's all it took for my entire world to tilt sideways. You know how sometimes you just know? How your body understands something before your mind catches up? My hands started shaking before I even registered what I was afraid of. I set the phone down on the counter like it was made of glass, like if I moved too quickly, everything would shatter. "Mommy, you okay?" Emma asked, milk dripping from her spoon. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, the words coming out automatic, well practiced. I'd gotten good at those lies over the years. The small ones we tell to keep everything looking normal on the surface, while underneath, we're drowning. Marcus came home at 6:30, exactly when he said he would. He'd always been punctual. It was one of the things I'd loved about him when we first met. Reliable, steady Marcus, who showed up when he said he would. Who remembered anniversaries and never forgot to kiss me goodbye in the morning. Except lately, those kisses had felt different, like obligation, like habit, like the way you pat a dog's head without really thinking about it. We sat in the living room, and I made tea even though neither of us wanted it. It was just something to do with my hands, something to focus on besides the way he couldn't quite look me directly. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months," he began, and I noticed for the first time how tired he looked. Not physically tired, emotionally exhausted, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "Just say it," I whispered. "Please." "I'm not happy, Claire. I haven't been happy for a long time." The thing about words like that is they don't hit you all at once. They seep in slowly, like water through a crack in concrete. First you feel the cold, then the damp, then you realise the whole foundation is compromised. "Is there someone else?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. He looked down at his hands. "No, yes, I've been talking to someone at work, Sarah. It's not, we haven't done anything, but you want to," I finished for him. He nodded, and I watched something in his face relax, like he was relieved to have it out in the open. Meanwhile, I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. "How long?" I asked. "Claire, how long have you been unhappy?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, 3 years, maybe 4. 4 years. We'd been married for 9. I thought about our life together, the house we'd bought with the bay window I'd fallen in love with, the garden I'd planted every spring, Emma's first steps, her first words, her first day of school, birthday parties and Christmas mornings and ordinary Tuesdays that felt like nothing special at the time, but now seemed impossibly precious. Had he been unhappy through all of it? "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. I kept thinking it would get better, that it was just a phase, you know? And then Emma was little, and you were so stressed, and I didn't want to add to everything, and then, I don't know, time just kept passing. I wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to demand how he could let 4 years go by while I walked around thinking everything was fine, thinking we were fine, while he was quietly slipping away from me. But instead, I just sat there holding my tea, watching the steam rise and disappear into nothing. "What do you want to do?" I finally asked. He paused, rubbed his face with both hands. "I think I need some time, space, to figure out what I want." Space, what a peculiar word for the thing that was about to tear my life apart. He moved out 2 weeks later. We told Emma he was going to stay at Uncle David's for a while because of work. She believed us because why wouldn't she? Children trust that the adults in their lives know what they're doing. They don't realise we're all just making it up as we go along, hoping we don't break anything irreparable. The first night alone in the house was the worst. After I put Emma to bed, I walked through the rooms like a ghost, touching things Marcus had touched, sitting in places he used to sit. The house felt too big and too quiet, and I realised I couldn't remember the last time I'd been truly alone. Not in years. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, I guess, and that's when I finally let myself cry. Not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies, but the ugly, desperate kind that comes from somewhere deep and animal, the kind that leaves you hollow. My mother called the next day. Marcus had told his parents, who'd told mine, because that's how these things work. Small towns and family networks mean your private pain never stays private for long. "Oh, honey," she said, and I could hear she was crying too. "I'm so sorry." "I'm okay, Mom. You don't have to be okay. It's okay to not be okay." But here's the thing about not being okay. You can't afford it when you have a 7-year-old who still needs breakfast and help with her homework and someone to braid her hair before school. Falling apart is a luxury, and I didn't have that luxury. So I held myself together with sheer force of will, moving through the days like they were a checklist. Wake up, get Emma ready, go to work, come home, make dinner, homework, bath time, bedtime. And then, finally, when she was asleep, I'd allow myself to feel it. That vast, aching emptiness where my marriage used to be. Work was its own kind of torture. I was a paralegal at a small firm downtown, and everyone knew. They'd give me these looks, part pity, part curiosity, like I was something sad happening that they were grateful wasn't happening to them. Linda from accounting brought me casseroles. Tom, one of the lawyers, stopped making jokes around me, like laughter was inappropriate in the presence of someone whose life was falling apart. But the person who surprised me most was Diane. Diane was the receptionist, probably in her 60s, with silver hair she wore in a neat bun and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd worked at the firm for 30 years and had a reputation for being a bit stern, not particularly warm. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the break room, but never really talked. One afternoon, about a month after Marcus left, she knocked on my office door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "Sure," I said, assuming she needed something work-related. She came in and closed the door behind her, which was unusual. Then she sat down across from me and folded her hands in her lap. "I wanted to tell you something," she said. "My husband left me when I was 32. We had 2 kids, 8 and 5. He met someone at a conference and just decided he wanted a different life." I stared at her. In all the years she'd worked here, I'd never heard her mention being divorced. "I thought I was going to die," she continued. "Not metaphorically. I mean, I actually thought the pain was going to kill me. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and couldn't breathe right because it hurt so much." "What did you do?" I whispered. She smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that knows things. "I survived. Not because I was strong or brave, but because I didn't have a choice. The kids needed me. The bills needed paying. Life just kept going whether I was ready or not." "Does it get better?" "Eventually, but not in the way you think. You don't go back to who you were before. That person is gone. But you become someone else, someone you didn't know you could be. And one day, it might be months from now, might be years, you'll realise you took a full breath without it hurting. And that's when you know you're going to be okay." She stood up then, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "Also, for what it's worth, you're going to be more okay than him. The people who leave, they think they're moving towards something better, but really, they're just running. And you can't run from yourself forever." After she left, I sat there for a long time, turning her words over in my mind. Marcus and I met for coffee 3 weeks later to talk about logistics. Divorce papers, custody arrangements, the house, all the administrative details of dismantling a life together. He looked different, lighter maybe, or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time in years. "How's Emma?" he asked. "She's okay. She misses you." "I miss her too. I'll pick her up this weekend like we planned." We talked about schedules and holidays and who would claim her on taxes. Everything felt surreal, like we were 2 lawyers negotiating a contract, not 2 people who used to love each other enough to promise forever. "Claire," he said as we were leaving, I want you to know, this isn't about you. You're a good person, a good mom. You didn't do anything wrong. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and realized something. He was apologizing, but he was also asking for absolution. He wanted me to tell him it was okay, that I understood, that we could be adults about this and nobody had to be the villain. But I wasn't ready to give him that. Maybe I never would be. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, and I meant it. Not because I was noble or forgiving, but because I was tired. Tired of being angry, tired of trying to understand, tired of picking apart what went wrong. I just wanted to be done. The divorce was finalised 4 months later. I kept the house. We split custody of Emma 50-50. On paper, it all looked neat and reasonable. But life isn't paper. Emma cried herself to sleep the first night she had to go to Marcus's new apartment. She was too young to understand that sometimes people fall out of love, that sometimes the shape of a family changes, and that doesn't mean anyone loved her less. "Why can't Daddy just come home?" she asked, her voice small in the darkness of her room. "Because sometimes grown-ups need different things," I tried to explain, knowing it wasn't enough, would never be enough. "But I need him here." I held her until she fell asleep, and then I went to my own room and stared at the ceiling for hours. This is what I hadn't prepared for. Not my own pain, but hers. The way my choices and Marcus's choices had created a wound in her she didn't ask for and didn't deserve. The months blurred together. I went through the motions of life, and slowly, painfully, it started to hurt less. Not because I'd forgiven Marcus or because I'd found some grand meaning in it all, but simply because time passed and human beings are remarkably adaptable creatures. I started therapy, not because I wanted to, but because my sister practically dragged me to her therapist's office and made me make an appointment. Dr. Patterson was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a quiet way of listening that made you want to tell her things. "What brings you here?" she asked in our first session. "My husband left me, and I don't know who I am anymore," I said, and then immediately felt stupid for being so dramatic. But she just nodded like I'd said something profound. "Tell me about who you were before you met him." I opened my mouth to answer and realised I couldn't remember. I'd met Marcus when I was 23, fresh out of college, still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. We dated for 3 years, got married, and then I'd spent the next decade being his wife, Emma's mother, a paralegal, a daughter, a friend. All these roles, all these ways of being defined by my relationship to other people. But who was I? Just me, separate from all of that? "I don't know," I admitted. "That's okay," Dr. Patterson said. "That's where we'll start." Over the next several months, I began the slow, uncomfortable work of figuring it out. What did I like? What did I want? What made me feel alive? I started small. I took a pottery class at the community centre on Thursday nights when Emma was with Marcus. I was terrible at it. My bowls were lopsided, my vases collapsed, my mugs leaked. But there was something deeply satisfying about working with clay, about creating something with my hands, even if it was imperfect. I started running in the mornings before Emma woke up, just short distances at first, barely a mile. But gradually I built up endurance, and I found I loved those early mornings. The world still quiet, my breath steady, my mind clear. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with over the years. Sarah from college, who'd moved across the country but texted me faithfully every week. Michelle from my old job, who invited me to her book club. Amy from Emma's school, who'd been trying to get me to go out for drinks for months. And slowly, painfully, like a bone healing, I started to feel like a person again. Not Marcus's wife, not just Emma's mom, but Claire. Whoever she was. One night, about a year after Marcus left, Emma asked me a question. We were making dinner together, spaghetti, her favourite. She was standing on a stool next to me, carefully measuring out pasta, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration the way it always did when she was focused. "Mom, are you happy?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. "What makes you ask that?" "I don't know. You seem different lately, like you smile more." "Did I? I hadn't realised." "Yeah, baby," I said slowly, testing the words as I said them. "I think I am happy, or at least I'm getting there." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to measuring pasta. But her question stayed with me. Was I happy? The truth was complicated. I still had days where I felt the loss of what I thought my life would be. Days where I saw couples holding hands and felt that sharp sting of envy and grief. Days where I wondered what I could have done differently, even though Dr. Patterson kept reminding me it wasn't my job to save a marriage by myself. But I also had days where I woke up and felt excited about the day ahead. Days where I laughed until my stomach hurt. Days where I felt proud of myself for handling something that used to scare me. Days where I looked at Emma and felt grateful for her, for the relationship we were building together, just the two of us. Maybe happiness isn't one thing. Maybe it's 1,000 small things, mixed in with sadness and fear and uncertainty, all tumbling together like stones in a river, slowly wearing smooth. I ran into Marcus 6 months later at the grocery store of all places. He was with Sarah, the woman from work. She was pretty in an ordinary way, with brown hair and a nice smile. She looked at me with something like fear, like she expected me to make a scene. But I just felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy. Just a mild curiosity about what he saw in her, what he thought would be different this time. "Claire," Marcus said, looking uncomfortable. "This is Sarah." "Hi," I said, giving her a small wave. Then to Marcus, "Emma's been asking about that camping trip you promised. She won't let it go." We talked for a few minutes about Emma, about schedules, about the mundane logistics of co-parenting. Sarah stood there awkwardly, probably not sure what role she was supposed to play. As I walked away, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Relief that he wasn't my problem anymore. Relief that his happiness or unhappiness wasn't my responsibility. Relief that I could go home to my quiet house, my messy kitchen, my imperfect life, and feel okay about it. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in the bay window I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The moon was almost full, casting silver light across the garden. In the spring, I'd planted new flowers, lavender and roses and black-eyed Susans. Things I liked, not things Marcus liked. I pressed my hand against the cool glass and took a breath. A real one, deep and full, the kind that fills your lungs and reminds you you're alive. And I realised Diane had been right. I wasn't the same person I was before. That Claire, the one who needed Marcus to feel complete, who measured her worth by her marriage, who forgot how to breathe properly. She was gone. This Claire was different. Harder in some ways, softer in others. More careful with her heart, but also more open. More aware of her own strength, but also more willing to ask for help. This Claire was still figuring it out. Still making mistakes. Still had days where she wanted to pull the covers over her head and hide from the world. But this Claire was breathing again. The thing about heartbreak is that everyone tells you time heals all wounds, but they don't tell you how that healing happens. It's not a steady upward climb toward wellness. It's messy and non-linear. You have good days and bad days and days where you're not sure which one it is. You have moments where you're fine, completely fine, and then you hear a song on the radio and suddenly you're crying in your car in the grocery store parking lot. You have moments where you think you've moved on entirely, and then you see something that reminds you of what you lost, and the grief comes flooding back, fresh as the day it happened. But somewhere in all of that mess, you change. You become someone who survived something you didn't think you could survive. And that changes how you see everything. I started to notice things I'd never paid attention to before. The way Emma's laugh sounded like wind chimes. The taste of coffee in the morning, bitter and warm. The feeling of accomplishment after a long run. The satisfaction of creating something, even if it was just a lopsided bowl that held pencils on my desk. Life became less about the big moments, the wedding, the anniversary, the supposed milestones of a successful life, and more about the small ones. Tuesday mornings, quiet evenings, the weight of my daughter's hand in mine. I went on a few dates eventually. Nothing serious, nothing that went anywhere. A guy from the pottery class who was nice enough but talked too much about his ex-wife. A man my sister set me up with who spent the entire dinner checking his phone. A divorced dad I met at Emma's school who seemed promising until he told me he wasn't really over his ex. After a while, I stopped trying. Not because I'd given up on love, but because I realised I didn't need it to be complete. I was already complete. Maybe bruised, maybe scarred, but whole. Dr. Patterson smiled when I told her this in therapy one day. That's the work, she said. Learning that you're enough on your own. Everything else is just extra. Is it okay if I don't want the extra right now? I asked. More than okay. It's wise. Emma turned 9, then 10. She grew taller, lost more teeth, developed strong opinions about everything. She did well in school, made friends, joined the soccer team. She split her time between my house and Marcus's, and while it wasn't what I'd imagined for her, she seemed okay. More than okay. She was resilient in a way that amazed me. You know, she said one day, completely out of the blue, I think it's better that you and Dad aren't together. We were in the car, driving home from soccer practice. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Why's that? I asked carefully. She shrugged. I don't know. You both seem happier now, and I like having 2 houses. I get 2 Christmases. I laughed, even though part of me wanted to cry. Kids find ways to make sense of things. They adapt, they survive, they find the silver linings even when we can't. I'm glad you're okay with it, I said. Are you? She asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I said. I am. And I meant it. 3 years after Marcus left, I got a promotion at work. They made me a senior paralegal with my own office and a raise that meant I could finally stop worrying quite so much about money. I took Emma out to celebrate her favourite restaurant, and she ordered dessert first because why not? We were celebrating. I'm proud, she said through a mouthful of chocolate cake. Thank you, baby. You're doing really good, you know, by yourself. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not by yourself, I wanted to say. I have you, but I knew what she meant. Without Marcus. Without the life I thought I needed. That night, alone in my house, I thought about who I'd been 3 years ago. The woman who'd received that text message and felt her world tilt. The woman who couldn't breathe properly. The woman who thought she'd never be okay again. I wished I could go back and tell her, you will survive this. It will hurt worse than you can imagine. You will cry until you're empty. You will question everything. But you will survive, and not just survive. You will discover parts of yourself you didn't know existed. You will become someone stronger, someone braver, someone more authentically you. But time doesn't work that way. We can't reach back and comfort our past selves. All we can do is keep moving forward, one breath at a time. I went to my pottery class that Thursday. Over the years I'd gotten better. Not great, but better. My bowls were mostly round now. My vices held water. I'd even sold a few pieces at the local craft fair. That night I was working on a new bowl, larger than anything I'd attempted before. My hands moved in the clay, shaping and smoothing, and I found myself thinking about nothing and everything. The clay was cool and wet between my fingers. The wheel hummed steadily. Around me, other people worked on their own projects, each of us in our own world, together but separate. This was my life now. Small moments of peace and creation, simple pleasures, hard-won contentment. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the life I'd promised myself on my wedding day when everything felt possible and forever felt real. But it was mine, entirely, completely mine. And somewhere along the way, without realizing exactly when it happened, I'd learned to breathe again. Not the shallow breathing of someone just trying to survive, but deep breaths, full breaths. The kind that fill your lungs and remind you that you're not just alive, you're living. The bowl on my wheel was taking shape, still imperfect, still unfinished, but becoming something, just like me. I thought about Marcus sometimes, wondered if he was happy with Sarah, if he'd found what he was looking for. I hoped he had, not for his sake, but because his happiness or unhappiness didn't affect mine anymore. We'd separated our lives, our futures, our stories. He was busy writing his, and I was busy writing mine. Emma would graduate high school in 8 years. She'd go to college, start her own life, become her own person separate from me, and I'd face another change, another loss, another chance to discover who I was in the absence of a role I'd played for so long. But I wasn't afraid of that anymore. If I'd learned anything from the last 3 years, it was that I was capable of more than I'd ever given myself credit for, that I could bend without breaking, that I could lose what I thought defined me and still find myself on the other side. The pottery class ended at 9. I carefully moved my bowl to the drying shelf, washed my hands, said goodbye to the other students. Outside, the night air was cool and smelled like rain. I drove home through familiar streets, past houses with lit windows, families inside living their lives, fighting their own battles, finding their own ways to breathe. I thought about all of us, everyone out there, carrying our private pains and secret joys, doing our best with what we've been given. At home, I checked on Emma, asleep, peaceful, one arm thrown over her head the way she'd slept since she was a baby. I stood in a doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling grateful for her in a way that made my chest ache. Then I went to my room, changed into pajamas and sat in the bay window one more time. The moon was out again, not quite full but close. The garden was dark, but I knew what was there, the lavender and roses and black-eyed Susans sleeping until morning. I placed my hand on the cool glass and took a breath. In, out, steady, full, real. I was okay. Not perfect, not completely healed, not without scars, but okay. And some days, that's more than enough. If this story touched something in your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Maybe you've been there, in that place where you couldn't breathe right. Maybe you're there now, or maybe you're on the other side, learning what it means to be whole on your own. Whatever your story is, know that you're not alone. We're all out here, doing our best, learning to breathe. And if you'd like to stay for more stories like this, more whispers from the heart, I'd be honoured to have you subscribe. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, you're enough, just as you are.